Stocktwits Nation. My name is Katy Perry. I'm here with Eric Chen, the CEO of Injective Labs. Eric, welcome to the Daily Rip Live. How are you doing today?
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Katie.
Well, we're so excited to have you here. We had a big week of crypto coverage last week on the heels of the launch of Twits, and really interested to dig in around what you're building at Injective Labs. Real quick for our audience, here's how today's show is going to go. We have Eric for about 20-30 minutes. A lot of questions into the toolkit he's basically built for building financial apps on the blockchain. And then we have Shay's going to come in around 9:30 at the opening bell, and we have a lot to cover in the equities market. We, of course, have the Moody's downgrade. Looks like the markets are going to snap the 5-day win streak. And some big Nvidia news. So lots going on. But Eric, I wanna start with you. We have a mixed audience, right? We have some people who are really deep into crypto who obviously know what you're building. Your company is absolutely enormous for a private company in terms of the fundraising. But for people who aren't familiar, what is Injective Labs and what do you provide?
Yeah, so Injective Lab is a software development firm. It builds and contributes to some of the largest blockchain protocols and also applications in the world, and some of which might be familiar to a lot of people, which is the Injective blockchain, which is a blockchain built for financial applications. It's one of the top blockchain network for like various financial focused projects. And then of course, Injective Labs also contributes to building of Helix, which has been a very exciting flagship exchange product.
Awesome. And so just to put a comparable on this, would you say it's kind of similar to what Shopify does for like helping build online stores? You guys have do for crypto trading platforms and financial services.
That's actually a really great way to put it. We actually used to like to call it the WordPress for finance. So which makes creation of financial applications via our plug and play modules extremely simplified and easy.
Okay, cool. And then who's buying or using the platform in this form? Is it large companies? Is it startups? What's the profile of user?
It's really for like anyone. Basically, for the end user will be interacting with the injected blockchain in one way or another via the applications that they use that houses on top of Injective, or perhaps from directly interact with the injected blockchain. And of course, there's also a lot of major financial institutions that utilize this injective blockchain for various other type of financial transactions. But it's really like an agnostic blockchain for all types of participants.
Very cool. And you brought up Helix. I want to talk about this flagship product, a decentralized exchange, so a DEX. Can you tell us what that is and why decentralized exchanges are unique compared to a centralized exchange like a Coinbase or a Binance?
Yeah, so Helix, simply put, is a decentralized exchange with a user experience that rivals centralized exchange counterparts. It aims to be the everything exchange, housing every single asset under the sun in one place, including crypto, stocks, ETF, FX, and much more, where traders can trade spot or perps with leverage depending on their risk appetite and also sophistication. And of course, one of the great advantages of being a decentralized exchange is the self-sovereignty, the security, and more importantly, just the sheer diversity of assets that users get to have access to compared to the centralized exchange counterpart within the space.
Yeah, and so for people less familiar, the pros and cons, centralized versus decentralized. I'm curious, do those currently live together, and they both had to play their own roles? Do you see a future where decentralized exchanges sort of take over, or how should people think about the existence of the Binance, Coinbase, Kraken, with what you're providing and others like Uniswap, SushiSwap?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very great point to make that basically recently we're seeing a very, very strong growth and resurgence of a lot of interest within decentralized exchanges and various DeFi venues. And certainly, every time this happens, there's been a discussion about how basically the DEX landscape, the decentralized exchange landscape, is going to completely take over the centralized exchange landscape, where it's going to be like 99% market share in the future. But in reality, I think that there's a more complementary role that they're going to play off of each other. Where centralized exchange venues will be focusing on the higher frequency, the faster type of trading activities that allows for the general like more sophisticated institutions and high frequency traders to engage. Whereas for the decentralized venues, it can still offer extremely competitive fees and also like liquidity, but at the same time having extremely diverse offerings, far greater than what centralized venues can possibly support.
Without getting too technical, I'm curious how the fees and the advantage in the speed and even the scale. I'm reading here you process over almost 2 billion transactions. How are you doing this from a technical standpoint? What is different about without obviously giving away anything? How does this all work on the back end?
I think one of the cool part about the Injective ecosystem is that it's fully open source. So really the secret sauce is like in plain sight. And I think a lot of the work comes into building a lot of hyper optimized, modules that are enshrined, what we call it, within the Injective blockchain itself that allows for kind of this highly optimized exchange order book layer, this highly optimized, financial transaction layer, this highly optimized, Oracle layer, et cetera, that allows for the transaction cost for these to be extremely cheap and at the same time delivering lightning fast transaction speed.
Yeah, no, obviously there's been a lot of DeFi in the headlines. I believe tonight there's a stablecoin bill that's coming to the table. You obviously have a new administration in the US that is more embracing of crypto and wanting to proactively create parameters to operate within versus simply levying fines. So I'm curious, with all the stablecoin murmurs, the Bitcoin coming back, where do you see like DeFi going this year? What do you expect to happen, I guess, at a high level? And what role does Injective play in that development of that ecosystem overall?
I think this is probably the most exciting possible time for DeFi as a industry and also as a market participant for a greater financial market. Because right now you're seeing, for a very, very first time, the serious and very clear regulatory framework for a lot of different types of like DeFi transaction, also DeFi interactions, and also DeFi protocols. And what this allows for is for a lot of these DeFi projects to have institutional adoption, to have basically different types of major financial giants to do pilot programs, to do different types of issuance fully on chain via DeFi rails. And we're actually seeing that very, very frequently in the past, like for example, with the BlackRock Buildo Fund, et cetera. And of course, us at Injective, we've been at very much the forefront of it, working with various financial institutions that used to be kind of sitting on a sideline, waiting for different types of certainty or clarity from the regulators to come in, and now fully embracing that and setting up pilot programs or diving in head first with us at Injective Labs and with many other folks within the industry, trying to take advantage of this critical moment for the space.
Yeah, we actually just had Michael Sonnenschein from Securitize on. He was talking about the Rock work, and I asked him this question. I want to ask you as well. It seems like these are concepts that are difficult for the average person to grasp, let alone our elected officials, which somehow don't seem to know how Gmail works, according to some of these hearings. Are you engaged, or is your company engaged any way with government or lawmakers to help educate them around what you're building and the potential of that?
Absolutely. There's actually quite a few consortiums and groups out there that are currently actively educating different types of lawmakers. And us at Injective Labs, alongside the Injective Foundation, are also part of Blockchain Association, which is one of the largest education group on the hills. And of course, a lot of the work is required to fully educate every single individual senator and congressman, and it's also like a lot of work on us to go over there and talk to them and actively engage with them to show them that we're a very much serious industry, a very mature industry, and at the same time we're ready for any type of critical scale adoption there is.
Yeah, it sounds like a big challenge. We talk about the hearings a lot of like the tech knowledge isn't there, especially with the average tenure of the lawmakers and just being outside of the tech industry. Seems important to be engaged with them in a way that's meaningful. I want to transition to this sort of blurring of lines between traditional finance and decentralized finance. And I know you've introduced the trading of real world assets like gold, euro on Helix. Last week, we saw the MasterCard MoonPay partnership announced, where that stablecoin offering will be brought to MasterCard merchants. How do you articulate the relationship between these two right now? Is DeFi going to pull some of these traditional finance platforms assets into the future, or you think it's eventually going to replace them overall? How should we think about those two things living side by side?
Yeah, I think it's highly complementary, because right now, basically one of the biggest issue with or one of the biggest blocker within DeFi or any type of on-chain trading experience is the kind of like less competitive liquidity environment. Sometimes slower settlement speed, or slower execution speed for the users, and oftentimes also as a result like higher costs to users. But for the first time ever, especially via Helix, a lot of these assets can be traded on chain with global coverage from the start, with leverage in a totally composable manner, which allows for liquidity to have to reach institutional scale, which allows for the fees to be extremely compressed, and at the same time all settled, executed within a matter of less than 1 second. And user don't need to take physical possession of these assets by getting exposure to it, and they can trade these assets fully transparently without any type of counterparty risk, and they can also lever up to add more risk to diversity.
I want to talk about the institutional adoption. You brought it up a couple times, and I'm so curious, sort of how this works in the meeting rooms and on the Zoom calls. You have some institutions really leaning in, and some that leaned in early. Others are more laggards. I'm curious for the people, the companies that are a little behind. Is it a philosophical reasoning for that, or they're just not believers, or is it more about just the structural changes that would need to happen? And potentially disruptive changes to their business to actually embrace DeFi in a way that's going to set them up for success.
Yeah, I think you're pretty much correct there. A lot of them may not necessarily believe in like the benefits or some of the advantages when you kind of upgrade to a newer infrastructure, or adopt a or trial a completely new financial primitive almost. And at the same time, a lot of them are it's almost in like a sense like seeing is believing. For them, they're not necessarily seeing like the immediately payout, or yeah, kind of like a kind of unstoppable force of adoption amongst like all their competitors and all their peers within their respective industries. And a lot of them are indeed like a slow moving like that, where they're waiting until everyone to fully adopt blockchain or crypto to be able to get a move on. And this is part of the phenomenon, or like the stage that we're working towards, which is widespread mainstream global adoption. Because by the time for these to like for these folks to fully embrace crypto or fully embrace blockchain and incorporate it into their daily businesses, it's already a little bit like too late, and it's almost like the final stage when it comes to adoption. And I think what's exciting here is that we get to work with a lot of early pioneers. We get to work with a lot of different types of institutions or companies or folks that have a very very long running history within a traditional space, and showcasing and demonstrating success with them via various integrations and various rails, and introducing like a whole new customer base, as well as adding more distribution channels or streamlining various kind of like efficiencies or inefficiencies within their operations to basically kind of showcase that, hey, like this is indeed a very, very much superior or disruptive infrastructure.
I bet you've had some fascinating conversations. I want to shift gears a bit to this concept of trading bots. Because we had Vlad Tenev come on at Robinhood, and he was talking about potential role of agentic AI in the future of Robinhood. There's another brokerage out public that just released basically you can describe what you want the portfolio builder to do or trade, and it will do it for you. These are all early stages, but I'm curious, how do the trading bots work within Helix, and who's most suited to take advantage of those?
Yeah, so one of the coolest thing about like Helix trading bots is that AI has always, been within our blood at Injective Labs. So one of our early kind of experimentations is basically this on-chain automation of trading experience, where user can engage to them almost like a trading bot that like does do the trading on their behalf once they like do set up all the parameters. And with the advent of like LLM, et cetera, like it basically gave us more promise that we're going to kind of like make this fully agentic. But currently, it's very much of an up and coming feature on top of Helix, where users can automate a lot of their trading using these bots, meaning the user no longer have to watch a chart every second. They have this like robot under command where they can configure it, set up a strategy, and run with minimal intervention, basically giving them like a Wall Street level cheat code. And a lot of them are like, for example, spot grid trading bot, which automates buying low and selling high within like a defined price range. And of course, there's volume boost bot, which is optimized for liquidity provisioning and volume provisioning using adaptive grid strategy to tailor for different types of like LP rewards.
Very cool. Let's go back in time briefly. I wanna understand how this all started, how this idea came about, when the company was formed. What was the sort of aha moment for you where you decided that this was the thing you wanted to build?
Yeah, I think there were certainly like a lot of moments for us when it comes to having the conviction to build what eventually became Injective. But I think one of the earliest or one of the most exciting time for us was realizing that historically, especially at the time, DeFi user experience has been extremely limited to say the least. The transaction time on top of Ethereum is 15 seconds, which a lot of things could happen. There were a lot of issues when it comes to front running, minor extractable value, et cetera. And then there were a lot of issues when it comes to just the cost of kind of providing liquidity, the cost of doing any type of financial transactions. And the aha moment for us was realizing that we can build a complementary and at the same time highly performant infrastructure. And we realized that this will solve a lot of the kind of innate inefficiencies and a lot of the limitations that was preventing DeFi to ascend and truly kind of become this higher frequency trading environment for a lot of advanced and professional traders. And basically flash forward like 5 or 6 years later, after a lot of work when it comes to making sure that this is highly performant, making sure that this is institution ready, Injective finally reached that stage.
Awesome. How many people are currently on the team?
Yeah, so I think at Injective Labs, there's roughly 50 or 60 people,
Wow.
and then got kind of a few dozen more on the Injective Foundation side.
Amazing. And I'm curious too, just leadership style. I think we're seeing an interesting shift right now of sort of a new guard of executives, CEOs coming into the fold. And I'm always curious to understand if you come into this role, you're modeling off of specific people or leadership philosophies that you've heard about before, or are people like you sort of rewriting the playbook for a new generation that's more focused on AI and DeFi? How do you think about that from a leadership standpoint?
Yeah, I think for me, it's certainly standing on the shoulder of the greats. But at the same time, I feel like in practice, for me, it's a lot of figuring out, as the job goes on. Essentially, you really have to adapt different types of leadership styles or your working style at various stages of growth for the company and for the ecosystem. And certainly in very very beginning, I probably had a very different working style or management style compared to like what I am now. So I think it's always about like evolution. It's always about trying to emulate or trying to learn from like various really successful business leaders in the past, at various stage of the company growth or like the company scale that suits you the best. And honestly, for me, it's just about like seeing a problem, solving it, and getting my hands dirty. And that's always been a consistent theme for me. And then figuring out like what works and what doesn't work, and then adjust the working style accordingly with it. And it's really that simple.
Yeah, all you got to do is solve problems. I like that articulation a lot because at the end of the day, that's really what it is. I want to end with one question. Looking forward, obviously, you guys are building fast, shipping fast, you're growing. I'm curious, what are you most excited about that you're working on in the next year, and what's something that keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I think one of the most exciting things we're working on is certainly furthering the offering of I assets, which allows for trading of real world assets, to expand to expand both globally and in terms of offering. And I think one of the coolest technical milestones that we're working on is the multi VM world, which allows for developers from all walks of life, whether you're from like Ethereum, whether you're from Solana, et cetera, to all collaborate and build within the same co-located environment on top of Injective. And that's basically, in our mind, one of the coolest thing ever because historically, interoperability has not exactly been the strongest suit within the crypto world. And these days, for the first time, we're taking a crack at it very much on the ground floor at Injective.
Awesome. Well, Eric, this was awesome. It was so nice talking to you. I appreciate you hopping on this morning. We'll have to have you back for more updates along the way. It's Eric Chen, CEO of Injective Labs. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And now we're going to bring in Shay, and we're going to switch on over to traditional finance land because there's a lot going on there. We have a ton of headlines that are trending this morning. Of course, Moody's cutting America's credit rating. Wall Street's definitely feeling it today. So in case you were under a rock, stock futures are sinking because Moody's downgraded our credit from AAA to AA1. So what's interesting about this is there's now 11 countries, I believe, with a higher rating than us. One of them is Liechtenstein, a country with a GDP of just $7 billion. So there's multiple back and forth going on this. I think people aren't really shocked. Obviously, there's a lot of conversations about our fiscal health in the country. And we also were downgraded by the S&P in 2011 and Fitch in 2023. So Moody's was sort of like this last holdout. So now, before the financial crisis, there was about 15 countries with the top tier holdings. Now it's about 11. So that's shaking things up a bit. I think most people, though, are seem to be shaking it off, at least in DC. They're talking about why it underscores the need to address our credit in the United States. But other people are saying this sort of like is baked in. People knew it was coming, although you're definitely seeing some red today and you're seeing treasury yields rise and some of the tech stocks taking a hit, your Palantir, others like that. Relatedly, there's a new trend that is basically saying invest anywhere but the USA. And this is going viral in Wall Street circles. And it's capturing a growing shift in global investing away from US stocks amid weaker performance. So we're recovering over here so far, knock on wood, but global stocks, excluding the US, are up 11% this year. And US equities are barely breaking even. So the markets here in the US are still pricey, trading at 23x forward earnings. And there is anything but the USA. It's abusa. It looks like abuse. But that's also a trend that's happening. Shy, what's up?
Hey, morning. Happy Monday.
What's going on?
Looking at the pre-market, it's a little bloodier than usual. I know there's a lot of FUD. I hate it when there's like negative headlines Friday afternoon because
Yeah.
it gives the bears all the platform they need over the weekend to spread that FUD. but this Moody's downgrade is like it's a nothing burger. I
Yeah.
think the market was just looking for a catalyst to pull back a bit because we were overbought, and I think it's just gonna be a little small little bump and not nothing to fuss over about.
Okay. Yeah, I was watching some of the shows this morning, and that seems to be the general take. Also, the timing on Friday, definitely some keyboard warriors over the weekend not touching grass and talking a lot about it. I think it's interesting to see how different people's reactions are. There's some like epic freakouts, and there's some people that are like, yeah, obviously our credit rating is not what it was. So. Yeah, that happened. I'm glad you're here also though, because I know Nvidia had a big event, and I'm curious if you followed that. What happened there? This was at Computex 2025, or maybe it's Computex. Computex is probably right. Did you follow this at all of what they're talking about, what they're bringing to market?
Yeah, so sadly, it was released 8 p.m. my time last night, this keynote speech, and as a 31-year-old, I'm shamefully gonna say I was asleep by the time
Yeah,
it started. So,
you should be. Well, I
uh,
can I can recap
no,
for you.
I caught up this morning because like
Okay.
it was a ton of announcements, and I
Yeah.
think the biggest TLDR of it for me was they're no longer just a hardware company. They are fully anticipating what the next derivative of this industrial revolution will be, and that's going to be the intelligence age, where uh, last night Jensen was revealing a kind of what the inevitability is going to become this new digital economy, where it's not just going to be AI chips, it's not just going to be GPUs, it's not just going to be just these standard hardware servers, etc. It's going to be the intelligent infrastructure. And what that means is like the architecture is going to be rebuilt, physical, digital. And you're seeing this new vision from Nvidia that's just going to be all about like the app, like stage two of AI. Like the reason I'm so bullish on the next stage of AI is the applications component that's built on top of like the actual hardware. That's where all the money is going to be made. That's where all the ceiling gets risen in this thematic. And I think that's when he was making the comment that data center is no longer just a warehouse of servers, like it's a modern factory. That's
Mm.
huge to me. It's like that's exactly what the vision is going to become, and they see that and they're getting ahead of it. Not just on words, there's also saying it with their actual products. Like the NVLink fusion announcement was huge. Like that was like I think the biggest announcement of all of them because it essentially it's a signal to all the hyperscalers, the Microsofts, Metas, Amazons, Googles, that NVIDIA is no longer a walled garden anymore. So if you want to build your own CPUs, that's perfectly fine. Keep doing that. But you're going to have to plug into our systems. You're going to have to use our interconnect. You're going to have to join our architecture. It's a classic example of an embrace and expand strategy where it's going to be open enough to be adopted and integrated enough to be indispensable. And I think that was the biggest calling because that's a huge TAM expansion where they're almost making their own product open source, and they
Mm.
see that this custom silicon movement from the hyperscalers is a reality and it's going to only escalate. That they want to kind of get in front of it and love seeing that as a first mover, knowing what the pieces on the board are going to be like and it's going to constantly change. But you have the ability to stay in front of it. That's everything you want in a company that you own.
Yeah. I want to stay on NVIDIA because there was, like, as you said, so many things announced. But real quick, obviously, that was the opening bell. The Dow is dropping 300 points. Yields are spiking on the U.S. debt downgrade. Shay calls out maybe it's just people looking for a reason to sell today. But the 30-year Treasury yield jumps above 5%. And we're watching the impact on the markets today. Of course, last week we had 5 green days in a row, which felt pretty good. Let's hop back to Nvidia. This the chip deal they have with Humane for Saudi Arabia, cloud AI they launched with partners like CoreWeave, SoftBank. What do you make of their sort of their deal makings in the Mideast right now? We went from them kind of in a bad spot with China to potentially entering an entirely different agreement or partnership plan that could just be bigger overall, maybe? I don't know. Like, I don't know how to think about that if that's a swap for China. But what do you make of them and what they did in Saudi Arabia last week?
I mean, I think first off, Trump made some deals when he went in the Middle East, and great. I think it was like $500 billion of deals. I think it's smart. It's because like we need to do everything possible to deleverage ourselves from the East. I don't think this like uh not I excluding tariffs. I think this like U.S. chip. I think this chip war we're having with China is never going to end because chips are becoming the new form of currency in this war that we're in, and everyone's gonna be fighting for it. And it's literally the compute is the new oil. And back in the day when the last war was had, like that's essentially a lot of it was because of oil. Like compute is essentially the new oil, and they're going to be fighting each other for it, for dominance, sovereignty. And I think that as many deals that we can make externally outside of China in this American AI race, like it's going to be like a necessity. And it's not just in the Middle East. Like you just saw this last night as well. Like Nvidia announced a massive Taiwan. They're building like a what was it? They're building a massive and not they're like hosting this massive supercomputer in Taiwan, and
Wow.
it's staging ground for like Nvidia's vision for like where of the AI industrial base. Like that's on purpose. Like it's kind of in China's ballpark, and they know that they kind of want to have just as much of a presence in Taiwan as China does, the US, and Nvidia is the way to do that. And I think that announcement was huge because now it's an omniverse powered digital twin for every single factory. And a lot of the partners are going to lead simulations of every production line. Robot gyms are going to be where physical AI learns how to operate. By the way, I love the term robot gyms because a lot of times, like you have to simulate all these algorithms in this physical AI derivative we're about to enter. And I think a robot gym is a really cool phrasing of that, of the simulation. So I think NVIDIA's I'm just so fortunate NVIDIA is American AI because they own the new digital economy, and essentially that's going to always result in America being the best in AI.
Yeah. Nvidia is down slightly today, but that's indicative of what's going on broader overall. They're only down about 1%. So it seems like there was a positive reaction to that news. The robot gyms I had not caught. That I'm just picturing that. That seems hilarious. I also live in New York City and go to Equinox, which is also sort of like a robot gym in its own way. There's a lot of aloe going on. Talking about this sort of distancing from the East a bit, I want to shift to Apple because I think this was Friday, maybe it was Thursday. Apple, of course, is moving a lot of its manufacturing to India. Washington, Trump specifically, pushing back on that, and now they're also worried about a deal between Apple and Alibaba that's come to light. So this deal potentially would bring Chinese AI into iPhones. And again, it's getting into this weird conversation we've been having around the growth of these companies naturally, and then like geopolitical tensions that come into play, and where do we regulate and where do we not regulate. The White House and the House China Committee are grilling Apple about the deal. And Alibaba, one representative called Alibaba a poster child for China's military-civil fusion strategy. So you're seeing these lines blurring, like you talk about a lot with cybersecurity, lines blurring between the business side of things and the policy. Apple has not officially confirmed this partnership, but Alibaba has. So this is one of those things, again, where I feel like every time someone's talking to China, one person says it's happening and the other person denies it. But what do you think about this, Siri becoming a geopolitical flashpoint?
I mean, first off, like I as much as I bash Tim Cook and Apple, like I'm really happy to see like 5 years ago they wanted to start deleveraging themselves from China. Like there were zero iPhones were produced in India 5 years ago. Now it's 20%. It's a slow moving process, like to go away from the Chinese factories elsewhere. Like it's not a flip of a switch. So like I do think that Washington probably wants that process to get accelerated quicker, but it doesn't work that way. So I think that anything Alibaba related, I'm sorry, but like it's Chinese government correlated. You just saw what happened to Jack Ma when he disagreed with the government. I half a decade went by, I think, and he was like nobody heard from him.
Where is
Like,
he?
he's back now.
They found him, but he's not.
They found him, but he's not the
laying
same
low.
kind of. Yeah, he's staying laying low. I think that's showing. It was like proof that like doesn't matter how powerful you are, if you build an Amazon of China, you're dispensable, and it doesn't matter like if you're your own separate entity. If the Chinese government wants to do something, they're gonna brute force it. So any kind of partnerships with Alibaba, like Apple, for example, there's 100% vulnerability or liability on the Chinese government getting access to something that America just does not want to have. So I'm for Washington like to be like, oh, why are you doing that? That's ugly type of thing.
Yeah, they're definitely putting the pressure on. It was fascinating this morning. I saw an author on CNBC, and I really want to read this book, but it's called Apple in China: The Capture of the World's Greatest Company. And the author, Patrick McGee, was a guest, but he was basically talking about how Apple sort of unwittingly helped really build China to where it is today, and talked about the economic impact of that one company on China. I definitely want to read this book because I never thought about it this way. And so Apple's sort of in a pickle. This has been, I think it's 20% of their revenue is coming from China. They've created a lot of value in that country, and now they're moving out of it now. Hard to fully become untrenched. And I think that could be an interesting. Maybe we'll do a book club. If anyone else wants to read it, we can talk about it on the show. Let's shift over to news out of the UK this morning. Shay, we talk about BNPL a lot. It turns out the UK is putting the brakes on buy now, pay later a bit.
Smart.
Okay. I can't. They're unveiling new rules that will bring Klarna, Affirm, and other firms under formal regulation for the first time, ending what they're calling the Wild West era of short-term credit. So basically what's going to happen is starting next year, BNPL providers are going to conduct upfront affordability checks and streamline refund access. Looking into this, there are a lot of the terms of accessing short-term credit and credit as we know are very different and much looser. Shay, sounds like you're on board. You're pro this.
For sure. I think buy now, pay later is the dumbest thing in the world. It's just the U.S. consumer economy has the strongest leg in the world because all they do is kick the can down the road on debt. That's what buy now, pay later is. Like it's anecdotal evidence in my life social ecosystem. They don't view costs anymore as a total sum. They view it as monthly payments, and there's a 0% interest associated with it. They think it's why not? It's $50 a month. It's not a big deal. Like I'll enjoy this product so much the first 6 months. Oh, it's a 2-year payment plan. So like, what are you gonna do in the next 18 months? Like you're gonna be annoyed, and then they keep doing that, escalating, compounding that, and then eventually you're gonna feel like when you don't have that top side income anymore. And unfortunately, in this world we're about to enter, like I think it's gonna get brutal. That you're gonna be leveraged to the neck that you didn't realize until you just can't afford to pay these buy now pay laters. Even if it's 0% interest, you just over leverage yourself, and now you're screwed. I think we're going to be heading towards that because right now unemployment's 4.5%. It's under 5%. I think it's going to drastically tick up, especially not just like white collar, blue collars. Physical AI is here. Robotics is going to replace a lot of blue collar, white collar. AI intelligence is here. It's going to replace a lot of them. So it's from blue collar and white collar. Nobody's safe. And I think in a couple of years that if you have this mentality that your job is secure and it's a cushy job, it's going to be like that for decades. You're delusional. In 2 to 3 years, the climate is going to drastically change, and nobody ever should feel secure of that job today. Like you need to be actively building something on your own, actively building a trait that can't be replicated from physical AI or intelligent AI. Because if you don't, you will be left behind. And I want to. This is like too heavy for a Monday morning discussion, but like I'm so advocate that everyone should be a little worried about their job being
Yeah.
replaced.
Oh yeah. I got drinks with one of my high school friends over the weekend. She's in town. She's probably one of the most brilliant people I know. I think she was in like calculus in 7th grade or something. And we were talking about this, and we were saying like within a decade, like what are we gonna do? It's scary to think about. And then I saw this morning there was a study that talked about impact of AI on workplaces. So this study kind of it made no sense to me. I'm curious what you think, Shay. But basically, it was a study of 7,000 workplaces. Found that AI tools like ChatGPT saved employees only about 3% of their time. I put in the only because I'm like, that's not possible. And it found it had no significant impact on earnings or hours worked. And I'm reading this and I'm like, there's no way. I was thinking about my own workflows. But it could be that people are just not adopting it enough yet. And once they do, and that learning curve is reached, we're going to unlock it. We're going to unlock something else. But interesting finding of just like how early days we still are. And when you talk about some of these companies that you believe in and invest in, Shy, like this to me is like how early this is. 3% time savings is nothing. Like I'm probably at like 20%. I don't know about you.
I mean, if you include AI summaries and conference calls, it's more than 50% for me. I don't listen to conference calls as much unless I own the stock.
Yeah.
But this is, I think, I don't say BS. It's somewhat misleading. There's just no world. But I do know for a fact, like, I think AI is everywhere. A lot of people in my social world, like, they just don't use it. And I'm just like, you're living in an analog world. Like, how do you can save so much time? And it's like, no, don't have the interest for some reason. And that's what's alarming to me because there's a tsunami that's coming across the board for everyone. And people just aren't preparing for it. They're like, oh, blue skies, sun's out. It's like, we're just gonna be chilling. Like the boat's gonna be like nice. No, the tsunami is miles away, but it's coming. It's gonna hit eventually. Be prepared.
It's so true. And like, I feel like every week I'm like in a new rabbit hole, but like I was up so late last night. So embarrassing. Vibe coding, which I hate that term so much. But basically, if you guys haven't heard it, it's this new thing where these conversational AI tools can actually build products and apps for you. And so I was playing around with this one called Create .xyz, and basically I was describing, I'm like, oh, I really want an app that puts a filter on photos to make it look like it's from 1996. Like it's a little like reddish saturation, a little grainy. And like, yeah, this is not like a unicorn app idea by any stretch. But I sat down at like 11:30. First I went to GPT and I was like, hey, I'm trying to vibe code this thing. Define the specs of what filters would need to apply. So it's telling me the hue, the saturation based on reference points. It's like articulating that. I then took that and I was like, cool, optimize this prompt for something I can use in a coding platform like this. Spits out the instructions. I go into the other chat, drop it in, boom, we're in business. Front end created, I can demo it. And then it's tying to different, they're like, okay, and it's walking you through everything. Like, okay, I'm gonna try to integrate with this thing. You need to sign up for this API platform. Okay, great, that's synced. Let's try this. Like, it's very buggy, but I'm like, this is crazy. And so sometimes you do just need to like try these things out. But I don't know if you've ever tested with like, I haven't really been like building a lot with AI. And now I'm like, whoa, you see those software engineering jobs going away, you see it.
Oh, I mean, Microsoft, their most recent announcement of 2,000 workers, 40% was software engineers.
Yeah.
It's happened. It's coming. I think, like you just said, like, you were just like, you didn't have, I'm assuming, a mission-oriented reason why you did what you did last night.
This thing.
Exactly. But something's going to form from that. And all of a sudden, like, you could have created an SMB last night out of just like, instead of watching this Last of Us, you just did that and created an SMB. Like there's gonna be so many SMBs getting created in this agentic AI world about to enter that I think it's really important for people to learn tools like you're learning the tools how to vibe check. I think you need to do that because you have to build something for yourself. You need it, and you have to build not just one thing, like a baskets of things until something works. I think that engineers are screwed 100%. Or I think let me rephrase. I think the job of an engineer has gone drastically different than a couple years ago because you constantly have to learn now every year the newest and latest thing. Like, you can't just be stagnant for, I don't know, half a decade. Like, it's the same stuff, coding, da da da. No, you have to consistently every 6 months probably learn the latest and greatest and how you can capitalize on the newest innovation in the coding sphere so you can stay on top of your job. But as like I know people in the space, they're stuck in their jobs. There isn't that many juicy jobs out there anymore and exciting companies in engineers. Like, they are stuck in their mid company, and like they can't go to the sexy hires anymore because they're just not hiring for that many workers. There's not that many open slots.
Yeah, it does seem like it's going to be really the 80-20 rule, and uh, the people who are at the top of their game will always have a place, or at least I don't even know about that actually lately. That's dark. But someone put it this way, and I forget who it was because it's so good and I always use it. But basically, they're saying AI has like reduced the distance between idea and execution. So if you're an amazing executor on software engineering, if you don't have the idea, you have a problem right now. And I think versus if you have an idea, and you don't know the execution, you can kind of get there. But even I had so many bugs. It's still like, it's like node.js, and I'm like, I have no clue. If I were an engineer though, using this thing, I would be in my bag. Like, I would have been ripping. So it is interesting if, you want purely execution right now is kind of getting replaced. You can have an idea and kind of execute, but if you can do the execution and you understand the execution, you have the idea, I think that's going to be like the next wave of people who are building like huge companies. Which is not to say my idea for an app was good at all. That's why I'm not doing that, but just fascinated to play around with those.
I mean, I think it's another indication that you just can't be a one-trick pony anymore. You have to know, you have to have so many like tools in your tool shed on like how to capitalize on stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting. This is exciting times because you can make the argument that the ability to get not wealthy but successful or in capitalism was diminishing in the mid 2000s to early 2010s, late 2010s. Like, it was just like every Joe Schmo or Jane Schmo, like, we were kind of stuck in this corporate ladder. That's the only way you can win this capitalistic game. Now AI is creating the tools that our grandparents had when they first came in the country, where like anything was possible if you had the vision, the execution, the idea, because these AI tools are just essentially creating all the resources you need to go from point A to point B, like you mentioned. This wasn't really available for past like 30 to 40 years. Like, we were stuck. Like, the dot-com era didn't really provide that as much for Joe Schmoes, Jane Schmoes. It was more enterprises. This is like the great opportunity that our grandparents had, and now we have to capitalize on it.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting too, the dialogue of there's a conversation that goes on of, oh, we use the AI, we're not actually learning, which I think, based on my experience last night, totally erroneous. I mean, it was explained, the tool was explaining what it was doing, and it was telling me about different apps it was connecting to, and okay, we need this API from this service. I was learning about new companies and how they're interconnected, and I don't know how to code, but I was through this process understanding more and more about front end, back end, how they interact. Like, it really, as long as it is self-directed to the point it is now, I think it is a learning opportunity.
Totally. I think whoever said that is just talking about binary outcomes, like, math question, or help me answer this for school. But it's intelligence. Like, so like, if you're working with someone that provides intelligence to you, like, you're learning, because it's not just a binary question solution. It's a thought partnership in a way where it helps you have this idea, and now it helps you orchestrate the deliverables for that idea, or more layers on that idea, and then makes you think more than just the idea. So I think whoever says it diminishes learning, I think they're truly referencing middle schoolers, high schoolers, probably some college kids, where school, I thought school was the dumbest thing in the world. I'm happy that school education is going to be forced to change, or it's going to get replaced completely, because I wasted decades of my life. I went to UC, graduated like really great grades, finance, international business. But like the only reason I was able to get my first job out of college is that degree. But I learned so much more
Yeah.
post 22 than I did in school, and I think schooling is just it's going to be forced to change because you can learn so much in AI that why do you have to force yourself to be somewhere physically for 8 hours a day when if you commit those hours into AI, who knows how much more you can actually learn rather than just doing the dumbest like midterms, the dumbest like pop quizzes, like on basics, like making of the modern world's essay on why Buddhism is indicative of what blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter, like type of stuff. I think it's gonna be forced to change. I'm really excited for my future kids on like what they're gonna be learning in elementary school, middle school, because it's not gonna be the same as it is today.
Yeah, I really think AI is going to make people dumber or smarter, and
Yeah,
you
totally.
choose your destiny. And I think if you're not a curious person, like, can't help you. But I will say, like, I was talking to my friend about it. She goes to a lot of lectures, reads a lot of academic journals, and I showed her this GPT that is all just linked into academic white papers and journals. And you can have a question about any topic and say, summarize this for me, source where your information's coming from, tell me about, and get like 1,000-word essay. And it's not going to replace the deep work of scholars, but that to me is like true democratization of information and knowledge in a way that, like, I think that's so powerful that some kid with an internet connection can read white papers from the top, researchers in the world in a quick, easy to understand way. And it is like, if you are curious, you are going to be supercharged by this, at least in the interim. And if you're not, yeah, maybe it's going to make you lazy. But I think it's in like the usage.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I fully agree with that sentiment. And I also like I went to a law graduation this over the weekend. In my head, I'm like, in 15 years, why would you really need that many lawyers? Like, I just don't like there's gonna be a GPT, like you said, associated with white papers that there's gonna be you can easily find a case in the past that helps prove your current issue right now without having to pay $1,000 an hour for a lawyer fee or go through like paying through the roof on all these law fees on handling a case for 6 months that's over six figures. Like, I just don't see a world where like you find maybe you need a lawyer to communicate the case in courts and have that rebuttaling that's live action. But a lot of times, if it's pre-trial, why would you need a lawyer? I don't think you need a lawyer pre-trial. If it goes to trial and doesn't work, then fine, maybe. But all these lawyers, I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know. Like, I see this being really disrupted in like 1 to 2 decades.
It's the same thing with the engineers, where if like you are a brilliant legal mind and you can strategically navigate a case and a strategy, great. If you are just the person writing up the contracts, I own my own small business. I use it all the time, and I'll use it to start on an agreement, get it 80% there, and then yeah, I'll pay a lawyer a little bit of money to check it over. The hourly, I even used it to understand like legal language within documents where I would normally try to seek legal advice, which I'm not saying replace lawyers right now or legal advice with GPT, but there's a section in a contract you're about to sign you don't really understand. I've put that in there and be like, okay, what does this mean for me in this situation? What does it mean for me in that situation? And at least it flags if it's something I need to dig into more. But it's the same philosophy of like, you need to have that strategic brain.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And I think there's going to be some law firm that's going to be the first name to disrupt the system where they're going to be a law firm marketplace, and it's just going to be all volume and scale of that last 20% you call it out. Like, if you just need someone trial lawyers, it's going to be like TaskRabbit almost type of thing where there's going to be so much more bandwidth that's going to be created for lawyers that really I just need you for 1 day. Know that here you study the case. This is everything that happened. I just need you for that 1 day, and that's it. I can handle all the admin stuff via AI. Someone's gonna create stupid amount of money on that,
Oh yeah.
but that's the future.
There's a pretty it's an not early stage, I think like a growth stage startup called Laurel.ai. And they basically they're going into these professional services and finding out where time is being wasted automating it. and freeing up basically hours-based businesses, figuring out where there's efficiency. So there's a lot of people like building around some of these like big changes you're talking about, Shay, and that's almost as interesting as the actual AI that's disrupting the industry, is like who's building adjacent, which is a fun way to think about investing.
And who's building everything for intelligence? What's it being built on? Nvidia systems. That's what I'm saying. Like, Nvidia is like all these applications we're talking about, like it's going to be ran on top of Nvidia systems, not just hardware, the whole ecosystem. So like that's why they own the new digital economy. People are just like, oh, this China FUD, oh, these hyperscalers make their own chips. Like, yeah, okay, sure. That's a small little bump on what's really gonna happen in the future. So keep spreading that FUD, everyone.
I love when we get on our rants about like the future of society. I'm right there with you, Shay, though. Like I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, shit. But you know, get curious with the tools, guys. Get curious, get in there, get smarter before you get dumber, I guess. Thank you again for joining us today. We will be back first thing tomorrow. It's Tuesday, 9 a.m. Eastern for a lot more market news and headlines, and we'll see you then.